welcome to Jefferson Liberty Radio, the voice of liberty in the Central Valley. I'm Matthew, joined as always by the lovely team here. We have Ted Howze on the line for a fantastic interview, but before we get to that, this episode is sponsored by Alzer Certified Safe and Lock. Alzer offers locksmithing services and alarm systems for a range of applications, including burglary, fire, temper, medical emergencies, and much more. Alzer has been locally owned and managed in Modesto for nearly 70 years, and with thousands of loyal and satisfied customers, you can be sure Alzer not only meets, but exceeds your needs. For more information, call 1-800-700-4780 or go to alzalarm.com. That's ALSALARM.com. Thank you so much to Al Certified Safe and Lock for sponsoring this episode of Jefferson Liberty Radio. Pat, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So, Ted, tonight we're going to just ask you a few questions. Would you like to start out with how things are going with your campaign, or maybe just give us
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me back. I always appreciate being on your show, on the podcast. And I think this is, the third time I've been on?
Think so?
Yep.
Yeah, I always appreciate our discussions when we're on. The campaign's going well. We're busy right now, basically campaigning about 6 days a week. Today, for example, I had a couple of fundraiser meetings this morning, and then went to the Modesto mayor's State of the City address as his guest. It was just a privilege to sit with Mayor Ted Brandvold's family and several other mayors within the district. And then after we finished that, had another couple of meetings with members of the dairy industry who, have some serious concerns about what's going on in the industry here in the Valley today. Everybody's having a tough time making ends meet. And, just really every day is busy doing something within the district, making contacts, raising money, which is the demon of running for Congress, because you just can't get there without raising considerable amounts of money. And, the best part of all of it is we just keep meeting incredible people. It really reminds you that this is an amazing country full of great people, and about 80% of us share about 90% of the same views.
Exactly.
So,
all hard workers and voting taxpayers, huh? Or maybe
go ahead.
Well, I mean, not necessarily in that order, but we're all hard workers. We'll just put it that way. Voting, and we are taxpayers. There we go. I don't know. It seems like most people share the same concern. They want to get up and either go to work or have enough money for retirement. And, everybody's looking out for their families, their communities. We're all concerned citizens over safety. We hear a lot about the homeless situation. Most people really want to try to find a way to help their fellow human beings, but keep their towns safe. And, we just, in the Valley, we're a tremendous population of good people, and the Valley's always been that way. And that's the best part about getting re-engaged back in politics is just getting back out amongst people and being reminded what a great country we are. Yeah, a lot of good people. I think I just a little sidebar here. I was sitting around the campfire last weekend, and I was telling a young lady who I was talking with. I said, "You know what? There's just a lot more good people than there are bad people out there," and I think you have just testified to that.
Yeah, unfortunately, the bad people make the news, so it seems like there's more of them.
Yeah,
that's the reality, and it's not the truth.
Exactly. So, hey, Ted, did you get a chance to look at the outline for the representation that John had put? Oh, by the way, John is not here tonight. He had a family emergency. So,
well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay.
Yeah, I did read it, and I'm going to probably go on a little rant on it with you tonight, because it's very similar to articles that I have written in the past on my blog, on my website. And I laughed because I sat down and did a radio interview with one of my favorite personalities in the whole Valley, Kevin Fox.
Yes.
During the primary last year. I know we all love Kevin.
Huh.
And I had written this paper about the federal government, and one of the questions I had asked in that was, do we need better representation? And the whole crux of that paper was, you bet we do. politicians are the only people in the world who create problems and then campaign against them. And if you sit and you think for a while and wonder, if both Democrats and Republicans are against deficits and debt, then why do we have deficits and debt?
Good point.
If all the politicians always tell us they're against inflation and high taxes, then why do we have inflation and high taxes? And the simple answer is we the people, we don't propose budgets. We don't have the constitutional authority to vote on appropriations. That the House of Representatives does. Nobody likes our tax code, but the people who represent us in Congress are the ones who write it.
Right.
We don't. The people don't ever set fiscal policy. Congress does. So there's 435 people that sit in a building in Washington, D.C., and they represent 300 plus million of us. Now, you stop and think about the depth of that for a second. 435 people are basically writing the laws for over 300 million of us. And then they spend most of their time and energy trying to convince us that what they did isn't their fault.
Yes.
They cooperate in this con job regardless of which political party they're in, and they get away with it because it's a little tiny fraternity.
True. The swamp.
I read John's paper and I think, he's just right on the money, because if the tax code is unfair, it's because those 435 people want it that way. If the budget's in the red, it's because those people want it that way. You follow my train of thought here?
Yes.
So I absolutely believe as a country we need more representation of the population in America. And I know it's one of the things that Jefferson's fighting for, right?
Exactly,
that
yes.
We're just not represented. I don't care how good a congressperson you are and how many staff people you have. You're not going to service districts of 4, 5, 600,000 people. It just can't happen. So,
right.
Obviously, I mean, there's some hurdles to cross, but we live in an age of technology. To this day, I don't know why we can't increase our representation back to manageable levels and then talk about, well, do we, today half your business around the world is conducted via teleconference.
Yes.
Why can't Congress meet in a similar fashion? Maybe they'd all get along better and get more done if they weren't sitting there face-to-face fighting all the time.
Novel idea.
Yeah. I think more representation is absolutely necessary for the future of our country. I mean, we've already grown past effective representation. I think we just, as a country, need to come together and figure out, okay, what does that look like? How do we make it work? How do we make it fiscally viable? And how do we actually get people represented?
That was it. That was the fiscally viable is one of the questions I was going to bring up. What does that look like? Does that look like billions of dollars of more? What is it? What did we hear last week from that was like I don't know what Congress costs us every year, but it was in the billions, of course. It's more representation. Right. $2 to $3 billion a year to operate Congress. Now, when you stop and think about that in the terms of, a multi-trillion-dollar federal budget, mm-hmm.
that, even if you doubled the cost or tripled, you're still talking about a rounding error on the budget.
Exactly. Yeah.
What is that rounding error worth for proper representation?
You can't. It seems like some people want to put a price on that, and it really, the value that the American people would get from a better representation, you can't put a price on that, really. And you can, but it seems more important to have that representation rather than to worry so much about how much it's going to cost or how much more it's going to cost.
So you stop and think for a moment. Here the gig in government is why it's so lucrative, say, for somebody like Nancy Pelosi to come over in our Valley district and buy a congressional seat. Why is it important to her to buy 7 congressional seats in California? Because when she controls the majority of the vote, she controls the checkbook in Congress.
Yes.
And to the victor goes the spoils. That saying is no more appropriate than in Congress when you write the budgets and you spend the money. Now, so it's hard enough for Nancy Pelosi right now to round up the votes that she needs to get things done, but she's still effectively able to direct vast resources into her home district because she controls Congress. How exponentially harder would that be for her or any speaker to say have to control, instead of 400 Congress people, 1,000 or 1,200? What it would do is truly make Congress a body of I'm looking for the proper term, consensus guidance. Because if you look at any one time, Congress is, even if it's 60-40 one party over the other, you're talking about a speaker has enough power to control 200 people and their votes.
Yeah. Yeah.
How hard would it be for one person to control, 400 or 500 people in their own party if you're still talking about a two-party system? It would be very difficult to continue the type of charades that are going on now. And then you look at what Pelosi's dealing with in Congress. She can't even control her own members on her side. I mean, what's going on with the anti-Semitism and everything in Congress right now is just horrifying.
It's scary. It's scary, and I'm sure I'm not even going to go into her head. She's beyond my mind capacity. That's for sure.
So Pat, that was the long answer to, after reading John's paper, I was hearing.
Good. Okay. Okay. Well, we like it. Well, we will go on into. Are we able to have that on the website? What John has written?
Yeah, we'll get it from you, Ted. If we could, we'll get that from you. If we could get that paper somehow, so that we can post it along with the show notes.
Oh, Aaron has it.
Aaron says he has it.
Aaron has it. No problem.
Yeah.
We'll post that so people who are listening can understand what John was writing and talking about. But Aaron has the next question, so go ahead, Aaron.
Well, Ted, I was wondering what you think about the top two candidates' open primary act.
Oh, I think we've asked you that question before, but
yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of it because it obviously sets up a system where in large swaths, it's a state issue, but it sets up a system in large swaths of California where both parties that appear or both candidates that appear in a general election are of the same party. And in California, because the dominant party right now is the Democrat Party, it's setting up where you have two Democrats running against each other, like the recent U.S. Senate race where it was Feinstein versus another Democrat.
yeah.
So you really don't even have a choice. And what it does is it discourages members of, especially if it's a minority party situation, from voting. Why would you show up if there's nobody that you support on the ticket in either way? So,
Right.
I'm not a huge fan of it. We're not going to change it, at the current time. So we just have to, run as a candidate knowing that that's the case.
Last week we interviewed Charles Dossett, who's running for the same thing that you are, the 10th district for Congress, in the Republican Party. He brought up an interesting thing that maybe, and I know that you've thought of this, Ted. Getting that conservative Hispanic vote. Because basically, if you think about it, those people really do have the same values that you do as a candidate. Have you thought about reaching out to that to those people, to that
The community
demographic? There we go. Thank you, guys. Demographic.
Absolutely, it's a core portion of our campaign. Now, I'm fortunate because I grew up working on farms as a kid. I learned a lot of Spanish on the farm. I spent the last 25 years working in the food, animal, veterinary industry. Half of my personal friends are Hispanic. I speak Spanish on the dairy. One of the things that I understand about the Hispanic community is you're absolutely right. Nobody immigrates to this country and decides, I'm instantly either a Republican or a Democrat or whatever party. People come to this country and they many times, unless they come as a child, they have core values and belief systems already. And one of the things I know from working deeply in the Hispanic community for the last, mostly my entire life is, we're talking about a community that values above all other things. Number one, family. Number two, their religion. Number three, their work ethic. No different than any of the rest of us. So in a party where, we say it's very difficult for Republicans to court the Hispanic vote, I say, well, that's baloney, because number one, and you guys, know me, I'm a conservative first and a Republican by default. So I always look at values from a conservative perspective. And I know when I'm out working and talking to the guys I work with, these people agree with the conservative message about 90% of the time. And it's funny because I get to working and talking with guys, and when we're done, I'll say, you realize that you're a conservative, therefore you should probably be a Republican. But when you talk to them in depth, a lot of the problem with the Hispanic population is they simply don't vote and they vote at half the turnout rates of the rest of the population. And when I ask a lot of the members of that community why, they say, well, because, we're told that Hispanics should be Democrats, but we don't really agree with them on most things, but we don't want to be Republicans because Republicans don't like Hispanics.
Oh,
and so it's a lot of discussion about where did you get that impression? Well, because Republicans want to deport us all. And, you go on to continue that talk, and I say, well, you work with me. Do you think I'm in agriculture. I realize how important the migrant community is to our industries here in California. Do you think I want to deport you? Well, no, but you're a nice guy. And, you have to say, well, most of the people I know are nice people.
Right.
Nobody views it as we don't want immigrants. I think the big, cutoff is we don't want people who aren't going to come into our country, work hard, assimilate, or even worse, be a criminal element. And what's funny is when you talk amongst the community, many of those people say, well, part of the reason they left Mexico was A, for job opportunities, but B, also to get away from that element that wasn't good for their children either. And so in the end, they don't support heavy illegal immigration either.
Yeah.
So the more you talk amongst the population, the more they start to realize, well, we share a lot of the same values. And I think this is one of the things, to much of the chagrin of the Democratic Party, that you see President Trump doing. He's really starting to win over non-traditional Republican voters with the strong economic message and the message that, we're working for everybody. We're not just trying to be, a white dominant society. This really, what they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. And so I see a definite change coming. Now, what am I specifically doing? I spend a lot of time in the community. We've been spending time out at many of the Hispanic flea markets everywhere from Stockton, trying to catch people coming from southern San Joaquin County down to Turlock. And I mean, literally just working the way through the markets, talking to people. It's a benefit to be able to speak Spanish. It's also a huge benefit in the fact that working with animals, one of the biggest places in all the flea markets are where they sell the bunnies and the chickens and the, different animals. And I get to sit around and talk with people and occasionally dispense advice on what the best breed of animal to buy is. And we're forging some really good relationships in the community.
Good. Well, just a question then. Have you thought about going on to Hispanic radio stations? Do you?
Oh yeah, we certainly will as the primary heats up.
Okay, there we go. That's what I encourage you to do that. And I mean, you've already thought of that, I'm sure. So, I don't speak Spanish, so I don't listen to those stations. But I'm really glad that you've decided to do that.
And we already have a really solid Hispanics for Howze committee,
Nice.
and we're going to be rolling out some super neat events over the summer and early fall to really try to engage the community in every single city within the 10th district.
Excellent.
So I'm not gonna put my strategy out there for everybody, but it's going to be pretty novel, pretty unique, and it's going to be a good time.
Oh, good. Very good. I think Aaron has another question.
Yeah, Ted, I was wondering, I know there's a subject close to you that I wanted to ask you about. Do you have any plans for healthcare to fix it or improve our situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. This is an issue that's one of the reasons I'm running for Congress. One of the handful of major reasons. And I think I've spent a lot of time with you guys, and I'm sure the audience remembers that, I lost my first wife to a treatable heart condition. And it had a lot to do with the way the health insurance company kept denying the doctor's requests for testing. And so for me, health insurance and health in general is a massive issue. I was talking with another elected official today who is fighting because her daughter only has one kidney and is now facing her second kidney shutting down, and the health insurance company not wanting to give them the medication she needs. They'll only prescribe the generic, which was part of the rejection of the first kidney to save money, and they're having to fight to get the proper drugs so that she doesn't lose the second kidney that she had transplanted. So we have issues in this country. I don't care if you're Republican, if you're Democrat. Health insurance affects us all. Health coverage affects us all. We live in a district where nearly half of the districts on some type of government-aided health care, be it Medicaid or whatever. And one of the biggest issues we fight here is actually a lack of doctors. People have coverage, but they have no doctors.
Mm-hmm.
So I have put together some ideas that are a whole framework for health care in our country. And it's more that I would like to be part of the conversation about how we move health care forward and interject some of those ideas. So, for example, to me, one of the things that drives me crazy is I'm a business innovator. I've run veterinary practices. I've owned, a half dozen other businesses through the years. I owned one of the first .com companies here in the Valley. And I always look at how do we build the next better mousetrap. And so the argument that's going on in D.C. over Medicare for all, which we all know isn't going to work because it would bankrupt the country, is really a discussion about trying to provide an old model of healthcare. So why aren't we having a discussion, hey, this isn't working for us. What do we do to fix it? I think the first thing we need to do is talk about technology. I'm sitting here talking to you guys tonight over the phone on my iPhone. The computing power in an iPhone, how many health apps are on an iPhone nowadays or on an Android? A lot of them do some basic diagnostic work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we open up competition across state lines, allow doctors to service patients from wherever they want? You can go through using telemedicine. You can contact your doctor's office, go through a basic health screening, and you could have a PA, a physician's assistant, come to your home and provide the basic physical. And then if you need to be referred into an office, you can go in for an office visit or hospitalization or, from there. We have a whole path of modern telemedicine, no different than us talking about Congress people being able to teleconference in, right?
Right.
We could do some amazing money-saving things that would benefit our entire society if we're willing to sit down and build the new, better mousetrap instead of trying to rebuild an old, broken system. So those are just one of the things that we're talking about in this conversation, moving it forward, is, how do we involve technology in improving healthcare in this country? Now, the second thing of this, which comes to the near and dear part of me, is a patient's bill of rights. Because I think no licensed physician in our country, if they order a test, that test should not be able to be denied by a health insurance company. I mean, if your doctor thinks, hey, you need a CAT scan, or your doctor thinks, hey, you need a ultrasound on your heart, The doctor went through the training. The pencil pusher sitting in an office at Blue Cross or Blue Shield or any other insurance company that I haven't named should not be able to deny a doctor's test request. So these are the types of things I want to bring to the discussion about healthcare as a Republican.
Right. I think I read an article this week about how the healthcare for all in England is 70 years old this year, and how very poorly, how poor the healthcare is there. They are short doctors. They're short nurses. Nurses are not even. They're putting things on shelves at stores rather than being nurses because of the terrible working conditions within the hospitals, and that was a really tough article to read. Thinking that they want us to go down that same path. I don't think so.
Sure. Well, you tell me in what other industry is it government's place? First of all, tell me what government does well.
Nothing.
Right? Nothing.
Can't think
just
of
go
anything.
in a line at a DMV or have to go to a VA health system and you're horrified and you realize you don't want to turn healthcare over to these people.
Right.
You go to Europe and you talk to people there and you realize, their health system is okay if you have a common cold or something that's basic preventative medicine that they're kind of working on with you, because most of the time, by the time you actually get in to see the doctor, you've recovered and you're healthy. So that's seen as a win. Most people cancel those appointments. But if you are diagnosed with cancer, I just read this in an article the other day, and I think it was in England. If you are diagnosed with cancer, your wait from diagnosis to initial consultation with the oncologist is 45 days.
Oh.
Wonder if we read the same article. It sounds like the same one.
Now, if you're a member of government, of course, you have a Cadillac healthcare system. You get in and your cancer starts getting treated, 2 days later. But if you're an average person, you wait 45 days, and they're making financial decisions on your healthcare. This is exactly what they did to my late wife and killed her. Right? They had
sad.
somebody sitting in an office making a financial decision, telling us she was too young and too healthy to need an exercise echocardiogram and a stress test, and she couldn't have the heart problem the doctor was worried about.
Man.
So this is what's happening in Europe every day, and people talk about death panels. They ultimately are going to make decisions about who lives and dies, because there was a study that just came out. I think the numbers were on 2017 in Sweden, where they showed that there was like 2,700 and change in deaths that were considered preventable deaths had continued treatment been offered, but the government had opted to quit treating those patients.
That's awful. It's sad. Yeah. But
so this is just a system we should never move toward.
Absolutely not. I agree with you. Ted, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I want to sneak this in here for any young people that happen to listen to this conversation, because I do a lot of talks in front of groups of young people.
Uh-huh.
And what most people don't understand when we talk about healthcare in this country is that roughly about 2/3 of Americans get their health insurance from their employer. So your employer is providing you with a non-taxable benefit. That's essentially a free benefit to you. Now, you pay your copay when you go, whatever testing you get done. But under government health care, you're going to be taxed whether you use the benefit or not, because you're going to pay for health care every day, 365 days a year. And then if you use it, you're still going to have high copays, up to $5,000 or $6,000 before you reach that annual limit on. So you think about what you're paying. Now, you look at the rest of that population. If you say 2/3 have employer provided, it's a non-tax benefit, then you take out the elderly that are on Medicare, and now you're talking about another, 25% of the population. So we're really talking about a healthcare dilemma in this country to serve about 10% of the population, roughly 30 million people. Are we going to eliminate private health care insurance and destroy 20% of our country's GDP?
And the best health
because
system.
we're looking
and the best
we're
health
looking
care
for a
system.
solution.
Go ahead. Excuse me.
Yeah, the best healthcare system in the world, and we're going to throw it out because we're looking for a solution for a sliver of the population. I think the answer is to look for more efficient ways to provide health care to everybody, not through government providing it, but the whole system. Open up competition, limit just the bane of health care, which is jury awards for malpractice, right? It's the practice of medicine. It's not perfect. And really put doctors back in charge of healthcare. And then now we're talking about, instead of Medicare for all, we're talking about a Medicare solution for some, right? As a country, we figure out, because we're a compassionate country, how do we cover that small sliver of the population? I bet we can find an answer.
I bet we could. We could if we use our common sense. I mean, it seems to be a lack of that in Washington, D.C. these days. So I really appreciate you giving all that information, because that sounds like a heck of a good plan to me. And so we'll move on to another question. Water. Let's go back to water. What's new on the waterfront? Are we on the waterfront? No pun intended there. Sorry, everyone. I'm the only one laughing here. Sorry.
Yeah, well, we're laughing. It's not funny.
Water is not funny.
Water is the fight of this generation. You know, I used to laugh. My grandfather was a wise old bird, one of my heroes. And I'll never forget sitting one day talking to him, and he looked at me, and we were talking about, I think we were talking about like the OPEC oil embargo and how it affected gas prices and stuff, and talking about it politically leading to the end of Jimmy Carter and the rise of Ronald Reagan. These were the discussions our family used to have. And he looked at me and he said, you know, oil's not our big concern. Someday there'll be wars fought in this country over water. And, you know, at the age at the time, around 18 years old, you laugh and you think, what are you talking about? I go up to the lake and go fishing and there's plenty of water, right?
Right.
But here we are.
Yep.
Here we are.
There we
The
are.
reality is water has become, for one party in this state, whether at the state level or at the federal level, it's become a shiny talking point that they do nothing about. We passed a water bond in the state of California, and there has not been 1 ounce of progress on Temperance Flat, Sykes Reservoir, on raising Shasta. You know, and our new Congressman Josh Harder just last week put out this water plan. It's all lip service. I mean, he's talking about building a reservoir up in around Diablo Grande above Patterson. And do you think that anybody in our local government was talked to before that plan was developed?
No, I probably
no. I had lunch. I had lunch today with the mayor of Patterson, who endorsed me, by the way, and they're fuming that basically this false plan is being made to look like you're doing something about water with no hopes that anything will ever actually be done, just so that Harder can say, I am pro-water. I think that's sad, because when you look at polling in the district on politicians, one of the topics that seems to fall off the table amongst voters is water. And it's not for the reason you think. We think it's important, right?
Right.
Everybody does.
It is important.
It is important. It's absolutely amazingly important. The entire voting public thinks it's amazingly important.
Right.
So guess what they think the difference between Republicans and Democrats are?
You mean the poll? The poll said?
When you ask people,
what do they say?
They think everybody realizes water is important. It's not a big issue amongst voters. Talking about water amongst the average voter doesn't convince them of anything, because it's such an important issue they think everybody must care about.
Oh. Huh.
Right?
Right.
And so Democrats know if they just pay lip service to pretending it's important, that people will buy that from them.
Right.
So they consequently they say it's important to them. They say they want to do something about it, and then they do nothing, and it doesn't hurt them politically.
Well, it's like that old adage: actions speak louder than words. Let's see him do something about it, huh? It's not going to happen.
Well, they won't do anything.
No.
Yeah, we won't do anything, which is one of the things that I think as a member of Congress that I would push heavily. I'm a big constitutional conservative, and I believe in states' rights. But I also believe in federal oversight because so many of our projects that we do have both a state and federal component. And when the federal government is the highest on the list, they also have the most right to oversight. So, when the state is collecting tax dollars to work on a project where they say, hey, we're going to raise a dam with part of this money, I think the federal government should come in and say, hey, we're part of this project. You collected money for it. You're making no progress. You have, 18 months to either allocate that money and start the project, or you're going to give it back to the taxpayer.
Idea.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we need to stop the theft from taxpayers. And the state of California is the worst entity in the country about selling voters something and then not carrying through on it.
Oh man, that just makes me want to I'm just shaking my head here. I just can't. Makes me so angry that we're just not listened to and nothing is being done. But let me just ask you, so that you would use this as a federal way to do that. I think that's a really good idea to say you don't use this money, then I'm sorry, we have to take it back. I like that idea.
Yeah, and you just saw President Trump do that with part of the money that was for bullet trains.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
Demanding a refund of the federal dollars from it. Now,
right.
I, on the other hand, yes, I would have demanded the federal money back, but I would have sent federal auditors in from the Justice Department, and I would have audited the state of California's books.
Nice. Wow.
Because I would have said, you have our federal money. It's been part of this project. Therefore, we have the right to open your books. We're going to take our money back, and we're going to audit the project that's held our money for the last 3 years, and we want to find out where it went wrong. And I think that that audit should be done, and those results should be published. I mean, that whole bullet train just showed the unwise action of our Democratic leadership in the state of California. Again, now this is a state issue. We're talking about federal oversight because this project's never going to be completed. Yet you go down and look where they took land from my parents' property, and there's a rail bed. Basically, there's land that's been cut out for it, but there's no rail bed. There's no rail. But a mile down from my parents' property, just south of Fresno, they built one of the largest high-speed rail locomotive repair facilities in the world. They built the repair facility for the locomotive.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the reason they were doing this is because they were spending money on the engineering and on all the expensive stuff that all these contractors that have hands in the state government's pocket and get favors and then turn around and donate back to Democratic politicians.
Yeah.
This is what they were doing.
Sure.
So they were paying off all their interest by building the worthless high dollar components first. And this is why the train isn't going to get completed. So it's just poor management. You would think before you did any building of overpasses, you would make sure first, okay, I have all the property acquired. They still don't have all the property acquired.
Oh, brother.
Right.
It's a boondoggle in every sense of the word, and it's political payoff, and so that it's a circular pattern. Right. I make sure your companies get hired, you get contracts, you make money, your people donate to my people, that money falls back to me. It's a never-ending cycle of, we know the water cycle, right? Well, it's the political money cycle. And this is where we either start electing common sense people that are willing to step in and tell the citizenry what's going on. right? Hey, guys, here's what's going on. And we shine the light of day on it, and we make it uncomfortable for people to pull the shenanigans, or we just all pack up and realize that we're headed the way of Rome, and ultimately, out of business will be hanging on the United States.
Sadly, it seems to be the way we're going. Ted, we're gonna wrap things up here. Do you have anything else you'd like to talk about? Is there any issues that we haven't discussed tonight that you want to talk about? We know where you lie on the gun issues. We know where you lie on the DACA program. We know a lot about you, but is there anything else that we don't know about you? Is there anything you'd like to talk about that we haven't discussed before?
Well, I'd say it's just very important. I'll leave everybody with this last little tidbit. The best thing you can do if you want to find out about Ted Howze is go to my website. It's very easy. It's just my name, www.tedhowze, TEDHOWZE. So www.tedhowze.com. You can find links to information there. Follow me on Facebook, Ted Howze for Congress. It's my official congressional page. We post kind of thoughts of the day, and I know a lot of you follow that and see the stuff that we post. I try to keep everybody current on, events with a unique take, usually from a business perspective or a constitutional perspective. I mean, just follow me if you're interested in finding out more about where we stand. You'll probably get more information than you ever want. And then lastly, if you want to see this end, I know your guys' broadcast range via the podcast, basically all over the country, but really heavily into very conservative parts of California. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Regardless of whether you live in the 10th district or not, you can help us start to swing the tide back in California by electing politicians outside of your own district, helping to elect. This is what the Democrats have done with Act Blue money by collecting it all over the country and funneling it into targeted districts. Now's the time for us to start. So how do we loosen Nancy Pelosi's grip on Congress? What we do as Republicans is start to find targeted districts that we can win and donate to those candidates in that district. We can win the 10th district. So the plea is go find us on our website, find a way to donate, whether it's $5, $10, $100, whatever you can afford. Go find our website, go make a donation. Hey, this is what it's going to take. Find the candidate, like the candidate, donate to the candidate, and help us pull Nancy Pelosi out of the speaker's seat.
Oh, that is that's music to my ears. Let's just put it that way. Very good, Ted. I just want to thank you again for coming on again tonight. And Aaron has something else.
Oh, I just wanted to say, Ted, you're a real friend of the show, and we appreciate that.
Oh, anytime. If I can fit it in my schedule, I'm happy to be on anytime with you guys.
Awesome. Very good. So anyway, Ted, thanks again for being here, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me. Good night, guys.
Okay. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Jefferson Liberty Radio. We want to thank Ted Howze for taking time to come on to our show. We always love a good chat with Ted. We would love to hear from you. You can email us at feedback@JeffersonLibertyRadio or via our website at JeffersonLibertyRadio.com. You can also leave us a voicemail at 209-214-8099. That's 209-214-4099. We'd love to hear your questions and comments. If you or anybody else that you know of is interested in sponsoring our show, you can head over to our website, again, JeffersonLibertyRadio.com, or email us at sponsors@JeffersonLibertyRadio.com. Don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast player of choice. Get those episodes downloaded directly to your phone every week when we release them. Leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes or those podcast directories where you can. We'd really, really appreciate it, and it does help our ratings. Find us on your typical social media, Facebook, Twitter. You can find us on some alternative media such as BitChute or Gab. You also can find our episodes on Spotify, YouTube, and Google Play. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Jefferson Liberty Radio, and we'll catch you next time.